We're going to start working on our fourth and final rim. So we're going to go to this layer here. Just any empty layer is fine. I'm just trying to keep the rims all together. I may even move this other rim over here later so that they're all 1, 2, 3, 4. So just go to an empty layer and we're going to press 3 to go to side view. We can see we have this image here. So we're going to go to the top and we're going to click on this eye to disable it. Then we want to add a new image and click open. Go to wherever you saved your files. Again, you can use this button if you want to see the pictures, but I already know that mine is this one. So select the file and click open. For this rim, we're going to do things a bit differently. Instead of using the strategy that we've been using where we create the spoke and then we manually rotate things around, well, we manually mirror it and then rotate it. We're going to use modifiers instead this time, so it'll be a little bit different. But it'll essentially be the same exact thing, except we'll be using modifiers instead of using a manual method. So now that we understand the manual method, we will be doing it with modifiers instead. I've decided I want to use this spoke. It has a pretty clear image. It has good shading so we can see where all the crease lines are. Some of the others are not quite as clear. Like down here, it's really not as clear where all the crease lines are supposed to be. It's mostly because the light hit this area more effectively for us to see the different crease points and curvature. So now that we've decided which spoke we want to use, we're going to rotate this accordingly. This is just standard stuff that we've done many times before. Just hold shift and left click to adjust this slightly. And do the same for the X and Y values, or Z value, I guess you would call it, until you have the spoke such that half of it is lined up with the blue, and this is also centered with the center of the Blender world. Looks like I need to rotate it still. And that looks relatively correct. Again, you're not going to get it perfect because this picture is at a slight angle. So another thing we're going to look at in this video, which is different than the other ones, is we're going to look at a method for determining exactly where this diagonal should be, which will help us when we're using the mirror and array modifier so that we don't have to worry about perfectly lining up points on this diagonal. They will already automatically be lined up assuming we do it correctly. So one way to do that is just to go to the Create tab, create a circle, and change it to 5 vertices and press Enter. We have 5 spokes, and we also have 5 center points. So this circle is going to give us a visual representation of where each center point is supposed to be. We're going to press Tab, R, Y, and then 90, press Enter. You'll notice that these points are not automatically lined up on this diagonal the way that we would like them to be. So I'm going to try rotating this by 18 degrees. We're going to do R18 and press enter. The reason that 18 works in this case, I'm just going to undo it to explain it, because normally this point we would have it here and you would want to rotate it halfway. And we already know 72 degrees is the distance we want to rotate in order to get halfway. Half of 72 would be 36, and half of 36 would be 18. So in trying 18 by R18, we've now noticed that 18 appears to be the correct value to get this halfway point. And now what we can do is scale with S to scale this out. And we want to line it up on one of these lines that we're going to be creating here. So we want to go until this point lines up with this line here. Just use S to scale. And it may not line up with all the points, but you want it to line up with at least one of them. And this will be our perfect diagonal point. The only thing to note about this point is whenever we move it in the future, you're going to have to use scaling, and you're probably going to want to scale by the 3D cursor. So you're going to want to change this to 3D cursor and then scale this point that way, because we're actually going to be deleting these other points here since we're going to be mirroring and then using the array modifier to create these other 4 points. So that's actually what we're going to do now. We're going to take these 4 points, press delete, and choose vertices. And just to show you the example, if I select this point, you don't have to do this, just watch while I'm doing this. And then I scale. It's going to follow along perfectly on that diagonal, just as we would want it to. And looking at this, perhaps looking at right here, we may need to compensate a little to make sure that this is going to be done correctly, because it doesn't seem to be halfway. It's a little bit less than halfway on our image, so we'll have to compensate for that. So I'm just going to do Control Z to put my point back where it belongs. And I'm also going to do Shift D to duplicate this point and move it over to this side of the rim, I suppose. And now we can start adding in our modifiers, so we can start seeing how we're going to create the rest of this rim using modifiers. So the first thing we normally do is we'll duplicate and flip it to mirror it. So we're going to go to the modifiers tab, we're going to add a modifier and choose mirror. By default it's going to mirror on the x-axis, but we actually want to mirror it on the y-axis. So we're going to disable the x-axis and enable the y-axis. Enable clipping as usual, and enable this button so we can see our mirrored points. The next thing we want is an array modifier, which we'll do similar to our duplication and rotation process. So if we go to add modifier and choose array, nothing's going to happen yet. What we want to do is press tab to go to object mode. Make sure you're still in the create tab, go to the bottom, and choose empty. This empty is going to serve as our rotation value. So what we're going to do with this empty is press R72 and press enter, so that the empty is now rotated 72 degrees, just as we normally would do for a 5-spoke rim. Then we're going to select our other object here, if we can. I'm having trouble selecting the other object, so I'm just going to press A twice, hold shift, and then deselect. Or just when this is orange, or darker orange, and this is lighter orange, we'll be able to select these vertices we have. So just press tab once these are orange, and you'll be back in edit mode. Then you can press 3 to go to side view. And for our array modifier, we want to use this empty. So we're going to choose an object for our array offset. So put a check mark here. Then click on this. And if you have a lot of things in your list, another way to do this, you could just choose empty from this list. But another way to do it is use this eyedropper. Click on the eyedropper. Hover over the object you want to be used, and then left click, and you'll see it puts it down here where it's supposed to be. And we want to change the count from 2 to 5. That's going to be the number of spokes that we want, which is 5. And we don't see anything yet. If you want to, in edit mode, you're going to have to press this button, similar to what we did in the mirror modifier. And now you can see we have all the extra points that we need in the center as well as on the outside. If you'd like to, you can disable this while you're in edit mode, so it's not quite so confusing. At this point we can hide the empty, so we can go to object mode by pressing tab. Select the empty and press H to hide. Press A to select the other object, and press tab to go back into edit mode, which does not seem to be working for whatever reason. So I'm going to do Alt H to unhide the empty, A twice, shift and right click on the empty and press tab. So for whatever reason, this other object doesn't want to allow me to go into edit mode. So I'm going to select the empty again, press H to hide it, and we're going to see if we can find the most recently created object here. And maybe we'll just create this object again because it's not letting us go into edit mode here. Which is really strange because I've never had this happen before. But this is apparently plane 02. Although I can't really confirm that that is. Oh, it must be circle 7. Circle 7. Here we go. Okay. So in this list, just left click on circle 7 and press tab. So this is kind of a problem I haven't really experienced before. And it's probably just because we only have vertices, we don't have any edges or faces. It was really difficult to select this object. So we just selected it over here instead. and then press tab to go to edit mode. And now we're just going to press E to make an edge here before we have that problem again. We'll just do it this way, and we'll start creating our spoke, and then press E again, and press E again to move this up to this part, and then E again and bring it to the center. I'm going to use a similar strategy to the last one, where the corners are going to be created with Control-Shift-B to do a vertex bevel. That method works out fairly well from what I can tell. I'm just looking at the spacing here because perhaps we want to space this out a little better. I'm going to switch this to median point and space this out a little more, and perhaps space this out a bit more too. Give it a bit more distance. And then we can take these 2 points and press F. Well, actually, we don't want to do that because this inner curve is going to be the one that connects to this point. So what we can do instead is select this point, do E to extrude, and bring it over to here, approximately. E to extrude, bring it down to line up with this point. E to extrude, bring it down all the way down to here, I guess. And if we want a point that's going to be perfectly here for the mirror, we can select this point, Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, change this to 3D cursor, S to scale this point down, and stop when it lines up with the reference, and just use S to scale it again if you need to. So this will be our perfect point for the center line. So we can take this point, shift select this one, F to make an edge in this case. Another thing we will notice is the shading in this area. This is an indication that at this point or beyond this point, in either direction, the rim gets pulled towards the center of the car, probably from here in this direction, gets pulled towards the center of the car, and there's a bend in the metal. That's what this shading is telling us, is that there's a bend in the metal. So we're going to need points here as well, in a circular shape if possible. So we'll just keep that in mind. For now, what we're going to do is start curving these. So we're going to select this one, Control, Shift, and B. Mouse wheel up if you need to in order to create a better curve. I think 4 is going to be appropriate in this case, and it does seem to line up with the shading when we use 4, so that is going to be good. This one down here, we do the same thing, Control, Shift, and B. Mouse wheel up until you get the results you're looking for. We could get away with 3, but it may be a little jagged, so perhaps 4 will be better. And we'll take this point, Control, Shift, and B. Mouse wheel up if you need to, and maybe 3 in this case will give us a good result. And I may just take this point and just bring it back to where it started. I think I'm changing my mind now on what I want to do for that point, which is fine. And then this point, Control, Shift, B, and we will just further improve on the curvature in this area. So this looks good to me. And we may not have even needed this one point there, but that's fine. We'll take this point here, Control Shift and B, mouse wheel up, and we probably should do 4. But it looks like we may need to first right click to cancel. And I was going to say we may need to move this point, but it looks like it is in the correct position. So instead, we may want to do Control R, left click, and bring this point out instead. And that may help when we do Control Shift B to get a more accurate curve in this area. It's lining up a lot better now than it was. And we may need to do something similar in this area. And anytime I'm just getting it back to one vertex, I'm just right clicking to cancel the bevel. But I'm going to do Control R, left click, G twice, slide this up. And I'm going to move this in slightly, or in this direction slightly, to try to get this curve to be better. So we're going to do Control Shift B, mouse wheel up twice, and now we're getting the curve that we're looking for. So I'm going to left click and perhaps even get rid of this vertex. Select it, shift select this one, Alt M at last, and we're starting to get a nice shape to most of our corners here. If we want to round off these areas, we can do Control R. If you want, mouse wheel up once, or just do one vertex and then drag it up. And if you want better curvature, you can just do Control Shift B, and this will give better curvature here. Still not totally happy with it, so I'm going to select these two and bring them up some to help improve the curvature in this area. Similar things can be done over here. You can select this point, Control Shift B. If you want, mouse wheel up until you have enough points to make you satisfied, and then left click. I'm just trying to keep relatively even spacing. It's not going to be perfect, but in this case I think there's not enough space here in comparison to this. So I'm going to do Control Z and slide this vertex over some with G twice, and then do Control Shift B, mouse wheel up, and we should have at least a little bit better spacing in this case. Then I'm going to select these three because they still look like they need to be adjusted. And we're going to press G and move them out some until they better match up with the reference. When we press Tab, it's going to show this array modifier, so it's going to show the entire rim. And we can see it's starting to look pretty nice here. So what we're going to do is save this. We're going to go to File and Save. One thing I'd like to change about this rim is I think this area is actually supposed to be a little bit further out, similar to how it is on this side, because usually this would continue in a more circular fashion. Rather than having this in a little further, it probably should be out to match up better with this part of the rim. So we're going to select this vertex, hold Control, and then right click on this to get all these. Change this to the 3D cursor, and then use S to scale until you see it having a more circular shape. If you were to continue with your mouse along like this, that's probably closer to how it would actually be, and I think it's just the angle of the picture that makes it look like this is closer on this side and further on this side. So this is looking good to me. I'm happy with this. So now what we're going to do is start working on bringing these in and meeting up with this area. If you want to, you can press tab and then press H to hide this and take a better look at how this section is constructed. Of course, you can see that it goes down like this. This part has to actually go down and back to create this sort of effect like this. And we have some shading going diagonally like this, at least in that picture, where it kind of, these edges need to go down like this. So we can either do Alt-H to unhide. That's also going to unhide the empty. So if you do that, select the empty, then H to hide that again. Then we'll select our rim, tab into edit mode. I'm going to take this vertex, then hold Control and right click to get this vertex. I'm actually going to deselect these vertices here, so I'm going to do C for circle select, middle mouse to deselect, but I want this last vertex here. And then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, change this to median point, and then S to scale these down a little, just so we can see which ones are the new vertices. And then I'm going to position this vertex pretty close to the original vertex, because you can see it goes down slightly before it starts to go over. So this will help make sure that it goes down first before it starts going over. Keeping it close like this is what's going to help make sure it goes down first. And this is also a straight edge. That's why I didn't select these, because I want this to be the starting point and I want this one to be the ending point, so I'm going to position this one at the end of this relatively straight area. And then I'm going to join the starting and ending points, so I have this one selected. I'm going to shift select this one and press F. That will guarantee that this is a straight line, and if I feel I need to, I can reposition this vertex to better match with the reference. However, I think it was probably more accurate if it was actually a straight line like this. So now that that's done, we're going to finish the curvature here. We're going to try to follow the shading that gives us an indication of where our vertices should go. So we're going to take this vertex, for example, and follow that shading in that direction, and take this one and follow the shading again, and we'll take this one and just position it relatively halfway between these other 2 points, and then you just want to make sure that you have a relatively nice curve so that it's not a jagged curve. Next, you want to finish the rest of the points. This middle one, of course, needs to go straight down. And you just want to continue trying to maintain relatively even spacing. If there's a change in spacing distance, you want it to be more gradual rather than sudden. So this looks pretty good. The next step is to take these vertices and pull them backwards. So we're going to select this one, hold Control, right click to select all of these. And we want to move them back in this direction. But let's take a look at some of these others and see what happens when we do that. You can see that the model is moving. And that's because we forgot to turn off this relative distance value. So if we remove this check mark this is being pulled back just like this is, and everything is the way we would expect it to be. So we want to pull this back perhaps this far. You can compare the distance here with what it seems to be in the image. Do your best to guess how far back this should be. We can always adjust it later. The next thing to do is to continue these down to join them up. One possible solution is to select this vertex and select 3 of these and press F. That will make a quad. And then we need to bring this one over and this one over. So we will need 2 more points. So we're going to do Control R, mouse wheel up to give us 2 points. Left click, right click to select this vertex, 3 to go to side view, G twice and slide it down to relatively match up with this shading. Do the same for this point, G twice, slide it down. And you can even bring this a little further down if you feel you need to. And then we're going to select these 2 and these 2, F to make a face, these 2, F to make this next face. And we still need to connect these together, so we'll press F to make this final face. You can see the normals are messed up. These are facing us, while as these are facing away from us. So if we press A twice, do Control N, and then do Mesh, Normals, Flip Normals, they're now facing the appropriate direction. And we can go to Tools while we're in Object Mode and turn on Smooth Shading. So now we can see we're starting to get that shading effect that we were looking for. And we also have another shading effect that looks similar to what we see on the reference image. So for now I'm satisfied with the way that this looks. So we'll save it. We'll go to File and Save. Let's fill in this area in a similar way that we did to this. So we're just going to press Tab to go to Edit Mode. We're going to select this vertex, hold Control, select this vertex, that'll get all these. We're going to press E to extrude, right click to cancel, change this to the 3D cursor so that we can scale this in on the 3D cursor and keep our the correct line here. So we're going to S to scale and bring this down until it lines up. Then we're going to switch this back to median point, and we're going to start repositioning some of these. So I'm going to do Z for wireframe, select this vertex, G twice and slide it over some, and then select this one, hold Control, select these 3 and just bring them over some. I think we probably need to scale this out a little more because this needs to be a little bit further out. So we're going to do Alt right click and then change this to 3D cursor, S to scale it out slightly. And then if you need to, just reposition any of these vertices. Now we want to Alt right click, and we want this to have the same depth as this. So we're just going to grab it on the X-axis, hold Control and snap it to this point, or any of these points actually. And we want to switch the normals on this because it's too dark, it's messed up, the normals are messed up. So we're going to go to Face Select, select that face, go to Mesh, Normals, and Flip Normals. We can also press Tab and see that this has flat shading. So in Object Mode, just change it to Smooth Shading so that it all has smooth shading. Another problem you can see is right here. There seems to be this crease line, and you can see it over here too. That's simply because the vertices here are not being merged. So we need to make sure that merge is enabled, and we need to make sure that first last is enabled, because you'll see that this is fixed, but this is not fixed, because this is the last point, and in order to merge the last point we need this enabled as well. So you see when we enable it that this problem will go away, or at least it'll look the way it's supposed to. So make sure you have merge and first and last check marked. Another thing you'll notice is we kind of have this point. It comes to a point and then it goes back. That's because it's not really circular. So we're going to make sure that it's circular. We're going to change this to the 3D cursor. Press tab to go to edit mode, so do vertex select. We're going to select the points we want to make circular. So I'm going to make these 4 circular probably. So we're going to select this one, hold control, and then right click on this one. Shift, right click to select this, hold control, and select this. 3 to go to side view. And to make this circular, we're just going to do Alt, Shift, and then S. That's going to bring up the 2 sphere command in the bottom left, you'll see it. And then we just want to drag to the right until it says 1.0, and then we can left click. In a similar way, we want to select the same vertices on this inner ring that we did for the outer ring. So we want to select here, and then hold control, right click to select this, shift, right click to select this, hold control, right click to select this. So you want these selected and these selected. Alt shift and then S, and again you're going to drag to the right till it says 1 and then left click. That's going to make sure that we have more circular curvature here, and perfectly circular curvature actually, so that it doesn't have that jagged edge like we've had in some other situations. The next thing we want to do is fix this area down here. We're just going to select one of these vertices, period, to focus in on it. And one thing I noticed when looking at a different reference, I'll put the better reference or the different reference in the description. But these two actually need to be extruded, so we're just going to select these two, E to extrude, right click to cancel, change this to median point, and just drag these down. You can snap them on the x-axis to these if you want. It's not too important, we're going to be moving these in a second. Then select these 4, press F to make a face. So one thing I noticed is that this actually connects up to here. So what we can do is take this vertex, shift select this one, Alt M at last. And we also want to make sure that this has better curvature until this point. So to make it easy to see this, we're just going to click the eye on the mirror modifier and the eye on the array modifier. So now it's just this one piece that we're looking at. And we'll get a better angle of this. And what we want is to do something similar to what I'm doing here. So just select these vertices and try to add some curvature to this. I'm just moving it on the x-axis. I haven't moved it on any of the other axes. And we'll just leave this one right where it is and just adjust the other ones so that it has more curvature. This isn't a perfect replica of the curve that it has on the real thing, but this is closer to what it has. So now we're just going to re-enable these two modifiers by clicking the eye. And the next thing we want to do is to take these and bring them down. So I'll just show you real quick. You want to bring them down until it meets up where this other part is. So to do that, we're just going to press tab to go into edit mode. Alt right click on this edge, that'll get all these points, including this one. But we also want this one, so we're going to hold shift and right click to select that one as well. And then we're going to alt right click to get this. I just did 3 for side view and then did alt right click to get this. So now we have all these that are on the inner part, we have all these that are on the inner part, as well as this other one. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and we're going to bring these back slightly, approximately this far is actually pretty good. And then from this point, there's only a few vertices that get continued on, so we're going to select this one, hold control, and then right click to select these. And we're going to do shift and right click to select this, and then hold control and right click to select these. So we have 4 right here, and we have probably 5 right here. These are the ones that we made a circle out of earlier, you'll remember. So this will make a perfect circle, or at least it should. And what we want to do with these is do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then bring these back even further, because these pieces actually have some space between here and the bottom. I'm not sure if we can see it in our reference. I'm just going to try to take a look. This reference isn't the best for this. Like, the other reference is better. It's going to be in the description. I can't include it in the video, but I can put a link in the description for you guys to look at. But there is some space between this spoke and then where this bottom part is. This bottom part runs around the bottom, or runs around underneath the spoke, and there's a little bit of space between this bottom part and the spoke itself. So I'm going to do Alt H to unhide my rim again, and then tab into edit mode. So what we want from here is we want actually these points to connect up with these points to continue this circular area. So we're going to select these two and then these two, press F to make a face. But we want more curvature here, so we're probably going to do Control R and then mouse wheel up at least once, and then left click, right click. So you should have 2 new edge loops here. And what we can do from here is we can Alt right click on this bottom edge, 3 for side view, Z for wireframe, change this to median or 3D cursor, because we want to make sure that this is circular again. Since we added those 2 new points, they're not going to be perfectly circular. So we have to do this again. So we're going to do Alt Shift S, go until it says 1 at the bottom left, down here, and then left click. And we're going to need to do the same thing with this upper edge loop. So we're going to Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click, and we're going to have to select these 2 vertices by themselves. So we're going to press Z and then hold Shift and right click to get these 2. Then it's the same thing. We're going to do 3 for side view, Z for wireframe, Alt, Shift, and S. Go until it says 1, left click. So now these 2 are perfectly circular. And we're going to Alt right click on this bottom one, because now we want to start bringing it in like this to create that extra lip here. We're going to E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale it in. It's going to be a little bit different on the left or right, so you just match up with one of them, whichever one you think is correct. Like this one could be a little closer, but if you do that, this one will be off. So just follow one of the references and don't worry about the other one. Probably should follow this one since we followed it before with this line, so just follow this side. And the next thing, you may not be able to see it, or maybe you can, but from here it goes inward towards the center of the car more. So what we're going to do is E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then just bring it back towards where the car would be. So you should have something that looks like this. So we now have this part pulled back towards the center of the car. The next step is to add in some creases to make this look a little bit better, or some supporting edge loops to make the creases a bit more defined. So we're going to press 3 to go into side view and tab for edit mode. So the first place we want to do it is right here. We're going to do Control R, left click and drag this in. That's going to get us this crease around here. And if you want to, you can also do Control R and add another one up at the top here, and that'll get one there. And in order to get a crease line around here, it's going to be easier if we first finish off extruding these down. So we're going to right click on this vertex, hold Control and right click on this. So now you should have all of these 4 selected. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then just drag these in some. If you want to, you can do G and then X and snap it to one of these points here so that it has a similar depth to the rest of this part of the rim. And then all we need to do is select these two and select these two as well, and then press F, and that's going to continue this whole thing around here. So we can add in the crease line now. We can do Control R, left click, then E. If your dot's on the top, do F, and just bring it in fairly close. You can go to side view with 3 if you want, and then do Q and E again, and F if you need to get a better look at how close this crease line is going to be to the rest of it. So that looks pretty good. We're going to need to flip the normals in this area, it looks like, or at least these faces. So we're going to go to face select and select these two faces, do mesh, normals, flip normals. We can press tab to go to object mode and turn on smooth shading. We're going to start filling in these areas. So we're just going to press 3 to go to side view and tab to go to edit mode. So we're going to switch to vertex select. And what we want to do is select, if we're going to select 3 here, we have to select 3 here. The only reason we can't really do all 4 of them is because these two and these two would make a really bad quad. Like if we did this, you can see how stretched it is, and this is not a good idea, so I'm going to undo it with Control Z. So instead what we're going to do is do these 3 and these 3. So we're going to select these 4 to start out and press F, and then select these 4 and press F. To bring it down this far, we want another edge loop that connects up here, so we're going to do Control R, left click, and drag it down approximately the same height as this one. Then we can select these two and press F to make a face down to that point. To bring it out like this, we just want to Alt right click, change this to 3D cursor if it's not already. E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale it out. Alt Shift and then S. This is going to do to sphere again. Just go until it says 1 at the bottom, and then left click. You can do Z for wireframe if you want, and S to scale until you have the appropriate radius. Then E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale it out again. This time it's going to need to come towards us, so instead of going towards the car, it needs to come towards us. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and slightly bring it towards us. We can zoom in to get a better look at this. This is probably a little bit much, so I'm going to do G then X and bring it back slightly. Something like that I think is going to be fine. So I'm going to do 3 to go to side view, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then S to scale this out one last time. You can do Z for wireframe if you need to be able to see this a little bit better. So that should give us a better look here. So now we can add in some more supporting edge loops to make this look better. So in side view, by pressing 3, we can do Control R, left click, and bring this close. That's going to add that nice outer look like this. One of the edge loops we missed before was this inner edge loop, so we're going to add that now. We're going to do 3 for side view, tab for edit mode. We're going to do Control R, left click, then press E, then F if you need to. Bring this in close. You want to try to match the distance here with the distance here, so we have similar crease lines. That probably needs to be a little bit closer in on my model, so I'm going to just adjust this until it's much closer to this. So that looks good, except this crease line continues up along here, but we actually want it to continue until this point, because that's how it goes as far as I can tell on the real thing, it curves up until this point. So we're going to do K for the knife cut tool, and we're going to left click here and then drag it down to this point and left click again and then press enter. We can clean this up a bit so it's quads. Just right click to select this point, shift right click to select this one, Alt M and choose at last. So this does make a couple triangles, but it still looks fine when we look at it. We're still missing some crease lines, so we're going to add those in now. We're going to do 3 for side view, tab for edit mode. So we're missing the crease line that goes around here, and we're also missing the crease line that goes around here. So to add that, since we don't have any edges flowing here, if we did Control R, it would just go straight like this, but we want it to curve around, and we also want it to curve around here. So the easiest way to do that is the knife cut tool. So we're going to do K for the knife cut tool. Left click on this line, drag it up to this line, left click again, drag it over to here, left click, drag it over to here, and then left click, press enter. We're going to Alt right click to make sure that this is the only thing selected, Q, then E, then F, and bring this in approximately that far. That's going to be good, I think. We're going to have to do the same over here, so we're going to do K for the knife cut tool, left click on this edge. You'll know that you're on this edge when it's yellow. And then go up to this edge, left click, go up to this edge, left click, go to this edge, left click, press enter, Alt right click to get this newly created edge loop, Q then E, and bring it close. You can zoom in if you want to and try to compare the distance. I think I did a decent job, but first I'm going to merge these two because we have a triangle here and we also have a triangle here. So we're going to select these two, Alt M at center. You can do the same here, select those two, Alt M at center. And then just reposition these with G so that they have a similar distance to the rest of this curvature. If you want to, you can Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click, then Q and E and do this again to make sure they have the correct distance. And you can do the same here if you want, Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click, Q then E, F if you need to. Make sure it has a similar distance. So this looks pretty good. Now we should have the crease lines more defined like they should be. The next step is to start filling in this area here. And to do that, we're just going to bring a vertex across for now. But we also want to create this this bending point. That's what this is. Like from this point on, this part of the rim gets bent towards the car. So we need to have some geometry here. So we need to do Control R, left click and drag this up. Do Control R, left click and drag this up again to make the bottom of this crease line. And then do Control R, left click and drag it up here. Control R, left click and drag it up here. Just try to keep a similar distance here and here. If you need to, do G twice to slide these. Then select these four, press F. Those are going to be connected. We can do Control R, left click and drag this down a little so that we can connect these. So select these four and press F. This crease is going to continue on throughout here. So we're going to select this point, E to extrude, and just bring it around as if it was a crease line. We're going to make it a little bit thinner as we go. You can see how I'm making it a little bit thinner. until it gets to be really thin, just like it is in the reference. So we're going to make it pretty thin as we get down here. And I'm just using E to extrude and making sure that there is a pair at each point. And I'm going to adjust this so that I'm happier with how it looks. That looks okay to me. So now we're just going to select these two and press F a bunch of times to create all those faces. I want to fix the normals here just so that it looks correct. So we're going to press A twice, do Control N. Also going to press Tab and do smooth shading in object mode to make sure this has smooth shading. Press Tab again to get back into edit mode, A to deselect. So we want to continue this along here, and to do that we're just going to do Control R and left click and drag this over. But first I'm going to right click and do Control Z because it looks like I connected the wrong faces here, and yeah, you can see I connected the wrong vertices, I mean. So I'm going to go to face select, select this face, delete, and choose faces, go back to vertex select. This time select all 4 vertices that are on the same X value and then press F. Now press 3 to go to side view, A to deselect, Control R for a loop cut, and we'll bring it close just like the one up here. And then we can select these 4 and press F to join that together. We're going to need another loop cut down here as well, so we can do Control R, left click, and drag this over. Left click again, select these 4 and press F. I guess there's an extra vertex here, so let's do Control Z to undo that. We have to add in some of these other points first. So we're going to do 3 for side view. Control R, left click, and drag this down a little. That'll make this connection. I think I want to reposition this vertex, so I'm going to do Alt right click to get these. 3 for side view. Q to slide these down some. That'll make this connection. Control R, left click, drag it up. That'll make this one. For these corner ones, I'm just going to select these 4 and then press F. That'll make a small little face so we have less connections going this way. So we're going to do Control R, left click, and put it maybe here. Do Control R, left click, and right click. So now we can select these 2. Or actually, we're going to have to we can select these 5 here and then press F, and then we can select these 2. I'm just making sure I've got the correct 2 here. Then press F, 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 and then F again. And we can select these 5 and then press F. And all we need to do is select this one, shift select this one, J to join, and that will finish our nice little crease line here. If we want, we can deselect these 2, do Q, then E, then F, and try to match the correct distance here. That looks good. So now we have this area filled in, and we have our nice crease lines going along as they should be. So we're going to save it. We're going to go to File, Save.